on anti-corruption workers or anti-corruption defenders in the country is really meant to silence people from speaking out. I think as we sit here and many others, that certainly won't work. And we hope that many others are not intimidated into silence. Let me also welcome just some of our international friends here today from the World Movement for Democracy. Ken Wallach, who's the chair of the National Endowment of Democracy, Ryota Jonan, they can just indicate their hands there, who is the director. This movement will host a global assembly on democracy in South Africa in November 2024. You are at liberty to link up with them later on. Today's proceedings, we just want to read a short statement. Then members here will talk to you about their perspectives on the issue around the city, and thereafter we will take questions from members of the media. The statement says, Joburg Crisis Alliance calls for the resignation of Executive Mayor. The Joburg Crisis Alliance, JCA, makes a public call for the resignation of Councillor Kabelo Gwamanda, the Executive Mayor in the city of Johannesburg. This call is made in the wake of the significant decline in citizen confidence and trust in the leadership of the Executive Mayor and his mayoral committee. Not in the statement, but the Mayor has called those who oppose the surcharge stooges. So in what you have here are stooges as well. And on Saturday, hopefully thousands of other stooges will gather at the Metro Center to amplify this call. Since its establishment in July 2023, the JCA and its convening organizations, namely the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, Organization Undoing Tax Abuse, Action for Accountability, Defend Our Democracy, and the Johannesburg Inner City Partnership, have witnessed an ongoing regression in the quality of services being rendered by the city and its entities, much to the detriment of residents of Johannesburg. The leadership crisis in the city and the specific failures of the Executive Mayor are reflected in the following recent incidents: the uncaring, arrogant and insensitive handling of the electricity surcharge and tariff increase by the city, and the ongoing widespread electricity outages across the city, the contemptuous and disdainful press statement issued by the Executive Mayor labelling Johannesburg residents who raised their concerns about the electricity surcharge as stooges, the intermittent water supplies since 2023 and prolonged water cuts in recent weeks, despite public assurances by Johannesburg Water that water supply is being managed adequately, resulting in street protests in different parts of the city, the admission by the MMC Finance that the city needs a loan of an amount of 2.5 billion rands from Agence Française de Development, AFD, to cover budget shortfalls, the virtual collapse of services in terms of road maintenance, cleanliness, and the provision of affordable housing, and the tragic assassination of a lead investigator into corruption in the city. These are but few of the issues that we are wanting to amplify here today. The JCA believes that the Executive Mayor and his mayoral committee must be held accountable for these and other critical lapses in service delivery to the public. We do not believe that Councillor Gwamanda and his team have the requisite skills and capability to resolve the deepening governance crisis in Johannesburg. Further, the Mayor and his mayoral committee seem to lack genuine concern for the well-being of Johannesburg and its residents, hence our call that Mayor Gwamanda must resign and that a new leadership must be installed in the city. The JCA demands the resignation of the Executive Mayor and his mayoral committee, a review of the recent prepaid electricity tariffs, an end to unplanned water cuts and emergency water provision to underserviced communities, an end to unplanned electricity load reduction, decisive and consistent measures in combating corruption and protecting whistleblowers and investigators, and open, transparent, and proper consultation with civil society, business, and labor in the governance of the city. Our call for change in the leadership of the city is not made in favor of any political party. We hold the view that whoever assumes leadership in the city must be held to account, irrespective of which political party they represent. The Joburg Crisis Alliance will continue to promote active citizenry for positive change. It therefore calls on civil society organizations, residents' associations, clubs and societies, faith-based organizations, and all concerned residents of Johannesburg to gather at the Johannesburg Metro Centre on the 27th of July at 10 a.m. to demonstrate against the current deteriorating situation and to demand positive change in the city of Johannesburg. Thank you very much. That's just a statement. I'm going to start on my left to ask my colleagues here just to speak to this from their particular vantage points in no less or no more than 5 minutes. And hopefully Reverend Moss will join us when he comes in. Tessa, you want to kick off? But I suppose we have to change chairs.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone, but particularly good morning to the residents of the city of Johannesburg. Because I think what is important for us is that we talk about a Johannesburg Crisis Alliance, because it's become very clear going through different parts of the city that there are definitely pockets of discontent across the city, from the most informal of areas in the city to the most suburban areas of the city with high walls and security. Everybody has a sense of discontent across the city, and the need for us as the citizens and the residents and the people who live in the city to come together and to start not only sharing our concerns with each other, but building power in order to hold our council to account, to hold the mayor to account, to hold the council to account, is absolutely urgent. I think for too long, and I think we've seen it in the last almost decade in the city, we have waited and hoped that politicians are going to come and save us, that politicians are going to come in and they're going to magically find the right combinations and the right ways. And credit to the voters of the city of Johannesburg that over the last decade and a half, we have, through the polls, shown our dissatisfaction. And it has gotten to the point where there has been coalition governments because we don't trust one particular party or person to come and rescue us from the situation. But that has not led to accountability and accountable leadership, strong leadership, and leadership that is willing to make sure that the city works, that the city functions. And so while this call is centered around the current mayor standing down, it is about a historic failure of leadership in this country. It's about now we're looking at over a decade of failure in leadership in this city, if not more. And I think that the call that we're making is about political consequences, is that if we are finding ourselves in a situation where politicians who are meant to be the advocates of the residents and the citizens of the city are not able to whip themselves into shape, their council into shape, their management into shape, the various entities in the city, from the Johannesburg Property Agency all the way through, that are just simply failing, city power that's simply failing. If we do not have political consequences, then we will never see change in our city. And so it is up to us as the residents of the city that we do not wait for another election before it is that we are able to act and move. We have seen other cities do it, other municipalities do it around the country, where even as far as Makana, you saw that the residents of Makana actually took their municipality to court to dissolve their entire council, because the only language politicians seem to understand when it comes to accountability is the threat of a political consequence. And so the situation is too dire. Last week we were talking to different people from across the city. We spoke to the people of Kliptown, and the residents in Kliptown are saying to us, you know, before we can even talk about the tariff, the people in Kliptown don't have electricity. The birthplace of the Freedom Charter does not have electricity, does not have water, does not have roads, does not have housing, and does not even have a place where they can now express economic activity, because there's all sorts of demarcations that is taking away things from the people of Kliptown. The residents of Naturina have been going to the city council. They tell us that, in fact, if you take us there, they're going to chase us away, because we've been going to the city council offices so often for our electricity issues that they know us by name and we know them by name. We've been speaking to the people that are living in Midrand. People in the Midrand know where all the boreholes are. in their areas. The people in Midrand, people who have more money than God sometimes, are saying that they're looking for boreholes in their areas to try and keep themselves and their children able to have access to clean drinking water. We have people who are in the Yeovil and Berea area, which most South Africans will then start shutting off because, oh, that's just migrants. That is not true. Number one, migrants in the city are also human beings. But number two, there are many South Africans who live in the Yeovil, Berea, Hillbrow area that are subjected to terrible services, to a lack of water and electricity. In fact, in the Yeovil area, it's so bad that whenever there isn't electricity, there's immediately no water because there's a link between the electricity and the water. And so we're looking at all of these different areas, very different areas in terms of their makeup. But we're all saying that there's a need for us to come together in solidarity and stand with each other and for each other. It is no longer possible for us just to fight in small corners and then for the councillors and the MACO and the executive mayor only to show up when it is suitable for them to do so. We must start calling them to our communities. We must start asking them to attend what we're calling citizen hearings across this city as a sustained action campaign. This is not a one-day campaign. It's starting on Saturday. But we are going to continue to put our foot on their necks until we have leadership that is responsive, until we have councillors that are not only appealing to their political parties, but are actually going to their wards, actually going to their ward committees and their communities to get mandates from them, are being transparent about why there's underspending, chronic underspending in the city. There's a chronic failure of spending on services, but a bloating of salaries in the city. It must come to an end. We are not just talking here about one person or one political party or one coalition. In this case, we realize it doesn't matter who's in power. Unless people are accountable, it matters nothing. They can change the political players all they want. What we want is accountable, competent leadership politically and in the management of the city. And if things don't change, we are going to have to start uprising from time to time, week by week, part of the city by part of the city, ward by ward if we must. But we deserve better as the residents of the city. And so I think for our part, we have joined this as the Rivonia Circle, not in our own right, not only for ourselves. We do work across not only the city, but across the communities of this country. And this alliance is bigger than the organizations that are sitting here. This is residents' associations that we are engaged with and that have come to us. There are communities out there all across the city, and that's what we are calling for. Not people to back us up, but for us to stand up for ourselves as citizens all across the city, come together and start asking, no matter who the politicians are, we deserve better leadership, competent leadership, accountable leadership, and a city that actually functions basically for all people all the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Tessa. Welcome, Reverend Moss. Can I ask Wayne, you want to take the hot seat, please? 5 minutes or less, please.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Tessa. I think really for us the message is to the politicians. If you're going to replace Gwamanda with somebody who's equally incompetent in running the city, in being the executive mayor and playing the leadership role, then the problem is not going to go away. We've seen for far too often now. We've had 9 mayors, I think, since 2016. We cannot have this continuation. So, we're often asked, but why the individual? He inherited a broken city. We understand that. But what we need is leadership to take civil society, to take residents' associations, business in their confidence, and to work towards a better city. So we need to work collectively. If the mayor is going to shut out civil society, if they're going to slam the door on us and not listen to the solutions that we want to bring and assist them in fixing the city, then we have a bigger problem. The management of the city is never going to fix Joburg on their own. They are broke and they're going out for more loans. They're indebting the city further to the future of our children and our future generations, and we're not going to get out of this hole. So we have to get out of this hole collectively, and we have to do so with joint, cooperative leadership with the various communities. If we do not do that, if we do not see a mayor that comes in to hold people to account, the Joburg City, the property company, is in a mess. Its leadership has been found wanting. There are reports on the degradation and the fires that killed 77 people in the city last year. Nobody's been held accountable. We're taking far too long to deal with the theft of electricity, to deal with the crisis of the infrastructure breakdowns. So unless we get leadership into a position that takes a stand against corruption, takes a stand against maladministration and wasteful expenditure, and can show us, before you go out there and get loans, what are you doing to reduce the waste? What are you doing to review all the contracts that you have, the bloated headcounts that you have? What are you doing to get your residents or your administrators back into work, back into the office at the Civic Centre? We know you've got to fix it, but a year later, on a minor fire and some slab that needs some reinforcing, for goodness sake, fix the city, get the administration back to work so that we can start engaging properly. The billing errors, the uncollected debt that is out there. This is basic leadership, basic management, basic systems that are collapsing. So we need good leadership, and we're appealing to the political entities. Stop playing musical chairs with the administration of the city. Stop moving people like the recent CEO of JRA out of his position, Louis Nell, because he is getting in the way of corruption, and then putting other people in that are not competent for those roles. We need professional leadership in every single department in the city. We need good finance management, and we need to fight the issue of corruption. So the political leaders have a lot to answer for here. And then we appeal to the public. We appeal to supporters out there. If you live in Johannesburg and you're not happy, come to this protest action, because protest is just one of the elements in the one arrow in the quiver of holding the city to account. But it is a very important one. We want you to show up, because the more people that show up, the more it is visible to the city that change has to happen. It's very safe. Starts at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning at the Civic Centre. Be there. Thank you.
And Alta's providing coffee. Reverend Moss?
Thank you, Sean. Well, I represent the Evangelical Alliance. Delete that. The Defend Our Democracy campaign. I was talking there about my other incarnation. We stand here, obviously, in support to the Joburg Crisis Committee. This is a great city, the city that a lot of South Africans tend to gravitate toward with hopes of a better life. And it obviously holds and stewards the hopes of many people that come to it. And it is such a tragedy that the leadership that is presiding over this city has been very disappointing. And one of the things that Defend Our Democracy is agitating for is for the residents across this country, but especially here in Johannesburg, precisely because it is a sort of city that I've described as a very great city on this continent, not only in South Africa, to have that agency to require more from the power holders in the city. And so the idea that the mayor of the city, along with his teammates of the mayoral committee, ought to really step down and fall upon their sword because of the maladministration that is going on, because of the seeming lack of consequence management, because of what appears to be, we know of the story of people who suffer and pay with their lives. Benedict Sitole is one example of somebody who was a forensic investigator of some maladministration in the city, and who was assassinated because of the fact that he was getting closer to what was actually the problem here. The fact that there is no consequence and no serious intention for the leadership of the city to actually get to the bottom of this, that rather they eliminate those people who seem to be helping us get to the bottom of it, seems to be precisely the reason that we feel they are not fit to run this city. What they have done in showing disrespect to participation by communities in terms of the way that they've raised the tariffs or allowed for the tariffs on electricity to be raised without due political consultation and participation of residents of Johannesburg is part of the blatant disregard for the voices of ordinary people in the way that they said about their work. And so we believe that that must end, that the era of non-accountable governance is over, that we are sitting with a report from the Zonal Commission that is hanging over the affairs of this country, but also on the citizens of this country as a whole, that all of us are being invited to do what we can to make sure that there is no repetition of what Zondo found to be the case in our governance. And so we do wholeheartedly support this campaign and add our voice to the fact that all of us should support the campaign and the protest that has been indicated by colleagues here on this podium. Thank you.
And the Evangelical Alliance will be there.
We'll be there.
Ish, Nkabela?
Yeah.
Ish?
Just say school paid. School paid. I couldn't help reflecting why I'm a community organizer. On the 19th of October, 1977, I was already working for South African Committee for Higher Education, SACET. And newspapers, leaders, organizations were outlawed by the apartheid government. I used the F word together with my friends. The apartheid government will not dictate to us how we organize ourselves. Essentially, why I am here is because I believe that our society requires good institutions. If you have broken institutions, broken municipalities, broken churches, or synagogues, that community is really poor. The second thing, which actually motivated me, and I'm still here, good leadership makes a difference. Good leadership makes a difference in people's lives. But good leadership is nurtured by the citizens, the community within which they thrive. If you have broken leadership, citizens, look at yourself. It's easy to look at the politicians and say they are broken. But citizen, community, country, look at yourself. Because if we took ourselves seriously, we'll have no Gwamanda being a mayor of this city. You cannot teach a child to drive by giving a child a Rolls Royce. Think a bit. That's where we are. I also want to say within these 5 minutes, a community which takes itself seriously, believes in its values, it believes in its norms, it believes in ethics. So that community will give business, politicians, and everybody license to exist and act. But if we are not values-based, we will actually allow things to happen. I am here today, and we're looking at Saturday, that church leaders, religious leaders, be they from the mosque, I think those who can be excused are those who honor the Sabbath. If they are not with us, Reverend Moss, there will be absence from work without permission. Indeed, Sunday sermons will be hypocritical noises because they have lost their values and what is important. Public life is accountability. Public life is being open. Public life means we have to recognize one another. So when politicians don't recognize citizens and citizens don't recognize their power, please go home where you will work and labor to be loved. So, what am I saying? It is time to fight. Fight or fat rather than do nothing. That's what we need to do. I repeat, fight or fat. It will make a difference. Thank you.
It's a wonderful new slogan into our political lexicon. But I guess when the sewage flows across the streets of Joburg, we can understand what the fat means. Fundamentally, this is about accountability at the top of an institution. We've learned from all the accountability that we've been doing over the last few years that if you try to fix up the street lights in your area, you actually don't know where to start. Because the person who is responsible for that feels that he or she can get away with not doing his or her job because those up the chain actually don't care. And we've learned that unless we escalate this issue to the top, we would be wasting our time trying to go to the bottom of it, which is why this call is focused on the mayor and his mayoral committee, because that's where accountability first and foremost must reside. I now open for questions. I'm hoping that we've covered all the issues, but anyway, let's take the first round.
Thank you so much. What would be your response to those all due respect that Al-Shabaab has said that Gwamanda is not going anywhere, and that he's still enjoying support from councillors in particular those from the SABC and Civic Alliance. So are they have the case for him? Because surely they're not going to try to make this a lack of office screaming less as one of the things going to get it as well.
Good. Can I take the next?
That was supported from Kaya News. We know the structure within the city is already one of a coalition. So I'd just like to ask if removing the mayor within the context that it is a coalition structure here, do you think that will be the start of the process of trying to fix things? Is it about removing him? And you did mention that he is an individual part of a bigger group, but in terms of removing him, will that serve really any purpose if the politics of a coalition?
Good. Let's take the third one.
Last Shaba from Jacaranda FM. Understanding that there would be some legal steps that need to be taken and other consideration. We have seen in the past where there's been interventions by the presidential government in terms of placing non-functioning municipalities under administration. Have you had any engagement with the Department of Corporate Governance and the government as to why this intervention has not been considered in the city of Joburg, seeing that these are historic issues that have repeated themselves and have worsened over the years?
Let me take the last one, and then we'll get a set of responses. Ready?
Is there a preferred mayor that you would want for the city of Joburg?
Yeah, Ish. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm serious. I can do it. I can do it.
All right. Essentially, Tessa, you'll kick off. Is this a futile exercise given Al-Jama's responses? Will removal change anything given that there is a coalition? legal steps, engagements with the province, I think Wayne and others can take on here. Is there a preferred mayor? And I can answer that very quickly, no. So can we deal with the three questions?
Sure. To answer that question, Heidi, or to amplify the answer, there's not even a preferred coalition. I want the council, all of those councillors that are sitting there, whether they're PR councillors or ward councillors, and all their political parties, to look around that council chamber and tell us who is the best amongst them to lead. They have all the power to choose the best person amongst them to lead, and the best mayoral to lead. They can make decisions that are rational, based on people's actual competence. And they can make a case to us as the residents that these people are the best people to lead. But either way, the point is that if those people don't lead, even if somebody else comes in and they don't live up to the task, our job is to mete out political consequences. There must be political consequences. And so whether or not it's Gwamanda today, honestly, Gwamanda's name could have been any other councillor in that chamber. We would be calling for that person to go. Because clearly the people that they've put up to the task right now are not listening to anyone. They're not standing up. They're not fixing the issues. They're not holding anyone in management accountable. So therefore they must go. And that's how our government works, right? The people who we put there. We can't do anything. I can't fire the municipal manager. I can't do that. They can, but I can fire them. We hired them, we can fire them. So anyone who comes into that position must step up to the challenge of responding to the issues of the city or get out. And we have to get to that kind of culture in this country as a whole. In terms of what the steps are in terms of province, I think the provincial question is a very important question, and I would even pose that question to national government. Because the coalition that we have now has been backed up by the ANC government, right? Panyaza Lusufi is very much aware of who the people are who are part of this coalition. The ANC holds the purse of this province right now. So Gwamanda is a face, but Dado Moreira is holding the purse. And so the question must be asked at a provincial level. Do they have the political will to take action even against people that they see as comrades? There must be political action that is taken. I mean, parties talk all the time about how they would like an outright mandate. Even if you have an outright mandate, are you using the powers that are given to you in governance to hold your oversight capacity and to hold people accountable? And the answer in the city of Johannesburg has been no for over 15 years now. We have not seen province move at all. We have not seen national move at all. The Section 139 gives powers to province and to national to dissolve a council if that council is not effective, if that council is in financial dire straits. Why provincial government has been quiet? We would like answers to that as well. We wrote to the president because we believe that if the president cares about municipalities, like he said last week in his address, that he will use the powers that are invested at national level to do something about the city of Johannesburg. It cannot just be that we must shout from the outside, but no action is taken from the inside. The best people should lead the city. And if those councillors amongst themselves can't find the best people, maybe it's time for them to step down, for us to do mass by-elections across the city so we can get people in who are competent. 2026 is too far.
Thanks. Wayne, you got any comments on any of these questions?
I think Tess has covered it all. It is about, regardless of who the person is, if we don't have the competence, if we don't have the strong leadership and to hold people in the city to account who are running the various departments and divisions that are supposed to be running the service delivery, then we have a problem. So we need competence, but this is a political issue, and this message is to the politicians. You need to stop playing the games that you're playing, and we need to get in place the right leadership in the executive mayor and his committee.
Ish, comments?
Yeah, I want to differ with Wayne that I actually feel that the joke is on citizens. That we are so polite, and every time we act and require them to fulfill what they have taken oath to achieve, we still are given a rule book. Read the book before you can talk. These guys definitely are fooling us. There are times where they will claim collective responsibility when they mess up. And when you say, all of you go, then they say no, it's an individual. Now, we are taking a position where we say whether this coalition is an individual or a collective, both of them are messing us up. In terms of what we have done, we have written to the president. We have written to him and we expected him to respond. But how do you comment about a president when he's your friend? The only advice I will do to make, respond. Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe a general point about the GNU. It's a general point that I think is important to make in terms of the government of national unity, coalition, as some might want to call it. I think that it does present to us as a society in South Africa a new moment in which we have to discern what it is we want to do with this government of national unity. Do we lower our expectations from it, or do we keep the heat on with regard to how we hold them accountable? And I think that whether Al-Jamaa, for example, or any other party would insist on doing something that citizens are quite clearly opposed to, I think it is, again, Ish is right, that we don't want it. It's not a democracy if in the last instance it is the power holders that get to decide. I think we have to have such a vibrancy in our democracy that makes it impossible for those in authority to ignore the citizens. And so I think that should hold as much for any single party that wins a majority or the GNU. We should not lower our expectations just because it is a GNU. Thanks.
Yeah. Can I? Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Can I just ask the SABC? You put out a wonderful clip here that has my face, and it says Joburg Mayor addresses the media. Please.
It's prophecy.
Very far from it. I did serve in the interim local government structures, the pre-interim structures, the transitional metropolitan council, and the first council of Joburg. I've done the stint. There's no going back. Can I just say that in response to the president of Al-Jamaa, he's made different claims. In the one sense, he's saying he's going nowhere. In the other clips, he says, well, it depends on the ANC. Either way, Gwamanda, in our view, is not up to standard. Is not delivered as a mayor. He might be good as a councillor, but when you're managing an 80 billion rand budget as the executive mayor, him and his team have been found wanting in a variety of ways. Yesterday, we were at a forum with Business Unity South Africa, and our message to business is that their investments in this city is worthy of greater attention and activism from themselves. Business has power. It needs to think about how it exercises that power, as do the citizens, residents, faith communities across the board. But the days of trying to cozy up to an administration that is failing is something that business has to rethink. It needs to join us in figuring out how to pressurize the city to change, and then to work with it in order to change it should we get to that particular position. Can we take another round of questions if there are any? Just say which media you're from.
Good morning, no media.
Okay, no media, but let's hear your question.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Brenda Johnson. The stone throw of 1976. Yes, we are wrong. We thought things would change, but it did not. Protest is good and all that, but I'm from one of the generations / Joburg, all the alliances are part of it. The only burning issue now we are facing, it's not only the metros and the mayor, but here we are facing with safety and security. Our people are dying, our children are dying there outside, and nothing is happening. And we felt so much as women as safety promoters to hold the SEPs accountable, to hold everyone accountable, even the president, even whoever. But nothing is coming to the party. People, children are dying each and every minute, every second. What are we going to do? Is this protest going to be so beneficial for us? Why can't we just take up, because we are the bosses of these people. We are the stakeholders, the major stakeholders. Can't we go sit in their offices and have the sit-ins if we are not going to get our answers on the 27th?
Well, first we have to get the center open. But I think it's an important point about where we need to consider going. Can we take the next question?
Good morning. I'm Farah Mushwana here from Eyewitness News. I think Tessa mentioned in other parts of the country the dissolution of the council. Do you believe this should happen in Joburg? And we know that a two-thirds majority is required for the dissolution of council. Do you think that should be the way forward for the city of Joburg?
Good. We'll address the solution.
Mashiach again from Jacaranda FM. I think, pardon, I didn't get the lady's name, but...
Brenda.
Brenda speaks to basically the reason to the question that I'm about to ask. There's been a decline, if you like, in terms of public participation, whether it is in deciding policy, whether it is in holding government at all levels accountable. And at the heart of it is the lack, or rather inefficient, civic education. Protest is a way of holding the powers that be to account. But there's steps that we're missing along the way, because I imagine that would be the final, call. What are we doing as organizations under this umbrella to promote civic education, and what else needs to be done? Because I imagine it should be a responsibility of the government as well to educate the general public about what they're entitled to, their rights, and how they can hold the powers that be at whatever level accountable. So civic education is at the heart of all of this. What is being done to address that before we get to even what the problems are and who should head out?
A very important question. We'll get people to answer it who are doing bits and pieces of work in that regard. Nobody on that side? We're done? Right. Can we get two responses? Wayne or Ish, you want to deal with this issue of dissolution of council? Wayne first?
Not civic.
No. Let's just deal with the first question. We'll talk about all that we're doing around civic education.
I think, there are various levels of accountability or oversight that are not being exercised. So certainly, as Tessa said, we believe Gauteng province is part of the problem as well, because they should have taken action a long time ago. But then you have Treasury, then you have COGTA, and fortunately we have a new minister in COGTA, Kabelo, who's making the right noises. I think his focus should be on this capital, this economic hub of this country, because, as was mentioned earlier, we cannot have the decay that is happening right here now. So we need to use all these levels. If the President isn't going to answer our questions, then we must look at how we bring legal action as citizens to have the council dissolved, as was done in Makanda and other areas. So there are legal avenues, there is protest action, there is putting pressure on all levels of oversight, and we need to exercise those right up to Parliament. We need to probably present ourselves as a case in Parliament and force the executives in those structures to start holding people to account. So we have to look at all of these avenues. This protest action is just one, but it is the start of many, and I like the idea of sit-ins now. We need to go and ensure that the authorities feel the pressure of the people now. And then to the question of business. You cannot, as business, be absent in this process. Your assets will be stranded. We cannot have this emigration and head offices and people moving out of the city. We need to bring Joburg back to the vibrance and the economic hub that it was and is and should be, far better than what it is. Business has a big role to play in this, and they cannot be absent.
Just speak about your civic education work.
Well, we've launched community action networks around the country, so we are engaging with various residents associations, community associations, business chambers to understand their rights, to understand the power that they have when they act collectively. We've recently launched Joburg Community Action Network, where we're working with various resident associations as well and community associations to understand that collectively we have a lot more power. And that's the type of stuff that Rivonia Circle is doing. So we're doing this in various ways, but this alliance now starts to bring the strings together. And I think we're going to see a lot more civil activism from a constructive point of view to start holding the councillors to account. We put them there, but we should be able to easily remove them, and we shouldn't have to wait 5 years to do so.
Good. Tessa, you've been doing a lot of work around civic education and so forth. You want to just share some of that with the audience here?
Sure. So the question about empowering each other as citizens is probably one of the most important questions, right? And so civil society across the board does a lot of that work. We do the work of going to communities and engaging them. So for us as Rivonia Circle, across the country we've done 100 democracy builders in the last 2 years, where we've gone in, done workshops with communities, empowered them in terms of their political rights, their political activism, and we have seen these communities come to life. We've seen these communities even work with the city and with government to start up mobile clinics, to start up groups in their communities around LGBTQR rights. We've seen people actually take action. We've seen people start up, but you have to actually invest in that. And we have a chronic underinvestment in civil society. We have a chronic underinvestment in civic education and civic conversations. I mean, if we see what the outcome of our elections are, we have a chronic underinvesting in voter education. All of our attention is on the politics and on the politicians. And I want to say to the media particularly, somebody actually asked me this question yesterday. He asked me, is it useful for us to even continue doing civic work with communities when communities actually do things and take action if the media is never going to cover it? The truth is we need the media to come and cover the work we do on a day-to-day basis in the communities. We're not able to pull together 500 people this week just because, we're cute people. We do that because we're in communities, empowering communities on a day-to-day basis. We're not sitting in air-conditioned offices. As the people sitting here, the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation itself has young people who do this work across Joburg as well. So we need more eyes and ears on that and more investment into that work so that we have sustained action. And to the point that you made, Ma'am Brenda, this is the beginning, not the end. It's going to take years to fix the city of Johannesburg. And what we need to do is not say the problem has been solved when the mayor has been changed. We need to get a tick list of the things that need to happen in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months. In fact, in the next 3 months, we need a list of demands that is going to be time-bound, month by month, clear, deliverable, and we have to show up for each other for those demands. So if there's a community that needs to go and speak to the city because they're experiencing load reduction and they want to understand what's going on, and the community of Yeoville is one of those communities. If they need to go and sit in somebody's office, I'm going to call on the residents of Johannesburg from all over to join the residents of Yeoville to go and do that sit-in. There's going to be rolling action and a pressure campaign in the city like we have never seen before if we get up and we show up for each other's issues. That's what an alliance is about. That's what a crisis alliance is about. So this is not a one-day action. This is going to be a rolling action. If you want us to come and sit in somebody's office with you, I will be there. I will be there for days. We will sit together. It's fine. But that's what this work is about.
Raish, civic education?
Yeah,
Any comments?
Civic education is really about citizens. Corporate citizens may mean business people. I think those guys need good dose of civic education. Every time we think of civic education, we think about Mrs. Mkabela, who is even much more astute. The business guys, captains of industry, your colleagues Mfundis, those who preach too much. I mean religious leaders. They need good civic education if we are to build people's power. Brenda, I don't protest to a non-existing party. It's just that words are difficult to use. Saturday is not a protest. It's a statement that this fake mayor's time or term is over. It's not a protest. You protest to a party you recognize. Thank you.
Reverend Moss, any?
One point. The media. I actually feel that apartheid would not have gone down if we did not have a media which was civic-minded, was part of the movement, the liberation movement. But if we have a media which would like to be spectators and they expect 73-year-olds like Ish to dance for them so that they report, they've missed it. You are part of the movement, guys. Play like one. Thank you.
Good. Reverend Moss, any comments?
Yeah.
And then we close. I suppose
It is to play, in a sense, the idea of civic education is something that all of us would vouch for. I suspect that the problem is that even politicians need civic education. So
Yes.
I think we should not only target the ordinary people in South Africa and business and other actors, religious communities. A lot of our politicians don't seem to know what it is that they are hired to do by government. For many of them, it is still a gravy train. For many of them, it is an opportunity to eat. For many of them, they don't know what is wrong with what they are doing. And so the idea that they know is often one that we will only realize after state capture has taken place. Then we realize people didn't actually know what they were doing and what they were expected to do. So I think to the degree possible, if we can see the project of civic education as part of what you do with a 30-year-old democracy to make it work across the board, not only ordinary people, but even, and perhaps protest actions are a way to school politicians about what democracy is, because I doubt they will attend any public meeting to educate them. So action might be the best way to school these stakeholders.
Okay, let me just make some closing remarks and then we can move.
Must speak like a mayor.
Appointed by the
SABC.
Appointed by the SABC. We've learned in terms of civic education and civic activism. Let me just give you 3 simple examples. You have a community of Fine Town. A clinic built, not open for about 5 years, and a community looking at this thing, not knowing what to do. We set up what is called Action for Accountability in that area, and then started the basic work of figuring out who's responsible for this, who's accountable for this facility not being open. Ultimately, it took community pressure onto provincial government and the MEC for Health to get this thing opened. You had the community of Lahai, a wonderful library built, unopened. Again, no answers. That community had to learn the basics of who's responsible, what did it cost, who had the contract, why is this thing not open, and serious public pressure had to be undertaken to force that library to be opened. You have the Joburg Library now, closed for more than 4 years. It took Flo Bird and the Heritage Society, together with authors and writers and publishers, to go and demonstrate there, to say that we want answers. what I think we all need to realize is that the dysfunctionality of the city allows it to almost escape basic governance, which is the provision of information. Try putting an access to information to this city is a nightmare. But it's not what we must accept. And it is those basic areas of work that we need to fix up so that as citizens, we can do the kind of oversight work, we can do the kind of fixing work. But when you don't have information, when you don't have financial information and every other bits of information, that work is just hard. But it's not work that we will not be doing. Today the council meets, I think, right? I guarantee you, in the audience, there's not a single civil society representative, business representative, aside from the media people who are following this. That culture of not being present in council by ourselves is something we have to change. There are council meetings that are open to the public, but trying to get access into the metro center, even to attend council meetings, is a nightmare. You have to write to the speaker, and they give you permission. If you get it in time, you're lucky, and then only can you attend. So you can't walk in anymore to attend a council meeting. And that's what we have to begin to change. You don't have access to what they are going to discuss in council meeting today. Most other modern cities would put these agendas out a week or more in advance, so that if you are a citizen, you know what they are going to discuss. And if beforehand you think you want to oppose any issue that is being discussed or you have an alternative, you have the ability to do that. We don't. As citizens, we are completely clueless about what they are going to discuss today. Many of the councillors would have received the agenda pack perhaps 2 days ago only, if they were lucky. How they prepare for these meetings then is a mystery as well. So the dysfunctionality is huge. Fixing it will take a long time. We think we are at the starting block only now. So bear with us as we build, and as Isha has said, we need everybody on board as we begin this process. We don't have all of the answers, but we think collectively there is sufficient wisdom in the city. One of the key sectors you didn't talk about was the academic institutions in this city, who need to come on board with all of their expertise and their ideas to begin this process of rebuilding. Let me just thank all of you for your presence here, and we hope to see all of you there on Saturday, together with the multitudes of Johannesburg citizens. Thank you very much.